Welcome back to the channel Rare Coins History. We're talking about a coin that people ignore every day. The humble, copper-colored, 1971 Lincoln penny. A coin that millions pass by without a second glance, but among those millions lies a secret. One version of this penny, with a tiny mark under the date, could be worth more than most people earn in an entire year. Let's travel back to 1971, a time of classic cars, bell-bottom jeans, and vinyl records. The U.S. Mint was operating full steam, producing billions of coins. That year, the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln once again graced the 1-cent coin. But here's where things get interesting. In 1971, Lincoln cents were minted at 3 different locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. If you've ever looked at your coins and noticed a small letter beneath the date, that's the mint mark, a small but powerful detail. Philadelphia pennies had no mint mark. Denver pennies showed a small D. And San Francisco? That's where things get exciting. Pennies from the San Francisco Mint carried a delicate S beneath the date. At first glance, all these coins look the same. Same design, same coppery color, same weight. But some of those 1971 Lincoln cents were struck with special dyes or suffered rare minting errors. Others were made with unusually high detail and flawless condition, the kind of perfection that collectors lose sleep over. You might be wondering, what exactly makes one of these coins so special? Well, let's start with minting errors. In some cases, the coin die was misaligned or reused improperly, causing doubling in the lettering or date. This is known as a double die error, and it's like the holy grail for penny collectors. The words, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or even the numbers in 1971 may appear slightly doubled, giving the coin a rare and dramatic look. Then there's the condition, something called mint state. When a coin is untouched, never circulated, and preserved like the day it was made, it earns a high grade. The top tier is called MS 67 or above, that's mint state 67, and it's like the Olympic gold medal of coin quality. Only a tiny number of coins ever reach this level of preservation, but what really turns a common penny into a collector's dream is the combination. A 1971 Lincoln cent from San Francisco, in near-perfect condition, with a striking minting error? That's not just a lucky find. That's a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, and what's even wilder is that these coins still turn up in the most unexpected places. People find them in old drawers, inherited coin collections, even in pocket change. Imagine that, an ordinary-looking penny that's been hiding in plain sight for decades, just waiting to be discovered. Now, here's where it gets jaw-dropping. One of these rare 1971 Lincoln cents, with the right mint mark, the right condition, and the right collector on the hunt, didn't just fetch a high price. It sold for a staggering amount of money. And we're not talking a few $100. Not even a few thousand. No. That one small penny was sold for $45,000, yes. 1 cent $45,000. So the next time you're about to toss your change on the counter or ignore that penny lying on the sidewalk, take a closer look. That tiny coin might just be your ticket to a small fortune. Coins are more than just currency. They're history. They're mystery. And sometimes, they're treasure. Today, we're diving into a coin that has shocked collectors and turned heads at auctions. A coin that looks simple, ordinary, and easily overlooked, the United States 1-cent Lincoln penny, minted in 1960. But don't let the size fool you. Because hidden in the details of this tiny coin is a secret that only the sharpest eyes can catch. Let's rewind the clock to 1960. Dwight D. Eisenhower was in the White House. The first televised presidential debates were making history. Elvis Presley was dominating the radio. And the United States Mint was busy striking millions of 1-cent coins, continuing a design that began all the way back in 1909. The Lincoln cent. It was in this year, however, that something strange happened. The Mint made 2 versions of the same coin. One with a small date, and one with a large date. That's right, the numbers in the year 1960 were printed in 2 slightly different styles. Now you might think that's just a design choice. But in the world of coin collecting, these tiny changes can mean huge differences in value. To make things even more interesting, these 1960 Lincoln pennies were minted in two cities, Philadelphia and Denver. The Philadelphia versions had no mint mark. The Denver versions, however, carried a small d under the date. That's the one you want to pay close attention to, because somewhere in the shuffle of design changes, date resizing, and minting rushes, something rare happened. Coins were struck using the wrong die combinations. Small date over large date. Large date over small date. These are called overdates, and they're extremely rare. Add to that a mint mark, and now you're in very exclusive territory. But that's not all. Even more valuable are the coins that come with double die errors, where the design is stamped slightly off twice, causing letters or numbers to appear doubled. Imagine seeing Liberty or the 1960 itself looking almost like a shadowed reflection. That's a sign of a potential jackpot. And then there's condition. Collectors go crazy for coins that haven't aged a day. The ones that look like they came straight off the press. They're graded on a scale, with mint state 60 and up being top tier. The finest known examples are often labeled MS 67 or higher, and these are the ones that break records. Now, with all this talk of errors, dates, and conditions, it's easy to forget, we're still talking about a 1-cent coin. A penny, something you'd usually find under the couch cushion or at the bottom of a purse, but not all pennies are created equal, because among those 1960 Lincoln cents, especially the ones with that tiny D mint mark, there are a few out there that are unlike any others. Coins that were minted under unusual circumstances. Coins that were never meant to be released. Coins that have survived decades without a single scratch or fingerprint, coins that now sit at the top of every collector's wish list, and just one of them, a single 1960 D Lincoln penny in the right condition, with the right combination of date style, mint mark, and error, was sold for a price that almost no one would believe. Are you ready? That penny sold for $55,000, yes. A coin that once sat in someone's pocket. That might have paid for candy or a newspaper. That could have been ignored and lost like any other. It's now worth $55,000. So the next time you spot a penny lying in the dirt, or you're sifting through that old jar of coins in your kitchen, don't be so quick to toss it aside. Flip it over. Check the date. Look for that mint mark. Examine it closely, because your spare change might just change your life. Today, you're going to find out exactly why this 1 cent could be worth far more than you ever imagined. Let's start with what looks like just another old penny. At first glance, the 1961 Lincoln cent seems completely ordinary. It features the familiar profile of President Abraham Lincoln, the same image that's been used on the penny since 1909. On the reverse, we have the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced just a couple of years earlier in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Now here's where things get interesting. In 1961, the U.S. Mint produced these pennies at two locations, Philadelphia and Denver. If your coin has no letter under the date, it was made in Philadelphia. But if you see a small D stamp just below the numbers, you've got yourself a Denver Mint coin, that tiny mint mark. It's more important than you think. You see, while the Philadelphia pennies were mass-produced and very common, the Denver Mint struck some versions of the 1961 penny that are anything but ordinary, because tucked away among the billions of pennies produced that year are rare and unusual variations, mistakes, imperfections, or one-of-a-kind strikes that somehow made their way past quality control. Some of these 1961 D pennies have double die errors, where the coin is struck twice by the die, causing a slight but visible doubling in the lettering or numbers. The word Liberty, the phrase, "In God We Trust," and even the date, 1961, itself may appear blurred or shadowed. And that doubling isn't a flaw, it's a treasure. Other rare specimens come down to the most surprising factor of all, condition. Most pennies go through decades of rough handling. They're scratched, dented, or discolored. But once in a great while, a coin survives untouched, never used, never circulated, stored away in pristine condition from the moment it left the mint. These are called mint state coins, and they're graded on a scale from MS 60 all the way up to MS 70, which is a perfect coin. The higher the grade, the higher the value. especially when you add a mint mark and a rare error to the mix. Now imagine combining all of those factors. A 1961 Lincoln penny with a Denver mint mark, with a rare double die error, and graded at MS 67 or above, virtually untouched by time. That's not just a lucky find. That's a collector's dream, and it's not just about rarity, it's about demand. Coin collectors and investors around the world are constantly searching for these elusive treasures, ready to bid thousands just to get their hands on one. Because in the world of coin collecting, something as simple as a tiny mint mark or an overlooked printing error can turn a common coin into an ultra-rare gem. And now for the moment you've been waiting for. One of these extraordinary 1961 Lincoln pennies, with the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and eye-catching detail, didn't just raise eyebrows when it surfaced. It shattered expectations, because that little 1-cent coin sold for a jaw-dropping total of $53,000. That's right, 1 penny. $53,000. So the next time you find yourself holding some loose change, don't be so quick to toss that penny aside. Take a moment. Look at the date. Look for the mint mark. Examine it closely, because you never know, the smallest coin in your collection might just be the most valuable thing you own. Today, we're diving into one of the most mysterious and quietly valuable coins in American history, the 1966 Lincoln penny. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. Just a simple 1-cent piece with Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile on the front. You've probably seen hundreds, maybe thousands, of these coins throughout your life, but there's something strange about the 1966 penny. Something most people don't even notice. Let's go back in time. The year is 1966. The Beatles are at the top of the charts, color TVs are just starting to appear in living rooms, and America is buzzing with energy. Meanwhile, deep inside the United States Mint, something very unusual is happening. That year, the U.S. Treasury made a bold decision. They stopped putting mint marks on coins. That's right, in 1965, 1966, and 1967, the U.S. Mint intentionally left off all mint marks from circulating coins, including the 1-cent Lincoln penny. Why? Because the government was dealing with a nationwide coin shortage. And they believed coin collectors were part of the problem, hoarding coins based on mint marks. To discourage that, they removed all mint marks temporarily. So here's where the story gets really fascinating. The 1966 Lincoln penny was still being minted at multiple locations, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, but there was no way to tell where your coin came from. All 1966 pennies looked the same. No D. No S. Just the year. But that's not the end of the story, because once the mint marks were removed, a new problem emerged: errors. And some of these mistakes turned ordinary pennies into rare, high-value collectibles. There are reports of die varieties, striking errors, and even transitional issues. Some coins appear to have doubling in the lettering, especially in Liberty or In God We Trust. Others may show weakness in the strike or oddities in the rim, all signs that something went wrong during the minting process. And because there were no mint marks, it became incredibly difficult to trace which facility struck which coin, making it that much harder to categorize and that much more exciting for collectors. Now let's talk about condition. Like all coins, value comes down to more than just rarity. A coin's grade, its physical condition, can dramatically affect its price. Most pennies are scratched, dented, or worn from decades of use. But a coin that has been perfectly preserved since 1966. That's a different story. Coins graded as mint state 66, 67, or even higher are the elite few, the cream of the crop. These are coins that have never seen circulation, with a flawless surface, full details, and a brilliant shine that looks like it was minted yesterday. And when you combine that kind of condition with a coin from a year without mint marks, a year full of mystery, minting experimentation, and possible errors, you've got a potential treasure. But here's the twist: there are only a few of these coins out there. Most people never notice the difference. They spend them, toss them in a drawer, or leave them behind without a second thought. But once in a while, one of these rare, near-perfect 1966 Lincoln cents shows up, and when it does, the value is nothing short of jaw-dropping. So what's the real worth of this so-called ordinary penny? One of these coins, a 1966 Lincoln cent, flawless in condition, possibly featuring a minting anomaly, and with a grade so high it took even the experts by surprise, sold at auction for a total of $50,000, yes, 1 cent $50,000. So the next time you're sorting through spare change, don't be so quick to dismiss that copper coin. Take a moment. Look at the date. Check the shine. Study the details. Because that 1966 penny might just be one of the rarest and most valuable coins of your entire collection. Today, I'm going to show you a penny that might just change the way you look at loose change forever, because there's one version of the 1968 Lincoln cent, a tiny copper coin that millions of people have touched without thinking twice, that could be worth an unbelievable amount of money, and the craziest part, it might already be sitting in your pocket, your junk drawer, or that old coin jar on your shelf. Let's talk about the United States 1 cent coin minted in 1968. A year full of history. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. The Vietnam War was raging. And America was going through one of its most turbulent times, but while the world was changing, the Lincoln penny stayed the same, or so it seemed. The front of the coin carried the same dignified image of President Abraham Lincoln that had appeared since 1909. The back showed the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. At first glance, nothing looked unusual, but look closer. In 1968, the U.S. Mint produced these pennies at 3 different locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And if you've ever looked just beneath the year on a penny, you might have noticed a tiny letter. That's the mint mark, a small letter that reveals where the coin was made. An O mint mark means Philadelphia. A D means it came from Denver. And an S? That one came from the San Francisco Mint. Now here's where it gets exciting: coins minted in San Francisco, especially in the late 1960s, are known among collectors for their precision, rarity, and occasional quirks. In 1968, both proof coins and regular strikes were being made in San Francisco, and some of those pennies slipped through the cracks with unusual characteristics. Some were struck with proof dies on regular planchets, leading to what's called a transitional error, where a coin meant for collectors somehow ended up in everyday circulation. Others were struck slightly off-center, or had doubling in the lettering or date, a valuable error known as a double die. But here's the kicker: even coins without obvious errors can still be worth thousands, if their condition is exceptional. I'm talking about coins that are completely untouched, with every single detail still crisp, every line sharp, every surface gleaming. These are called mint state coins, and they're graded on a special scale. The higher the grade, the rarer, and more valuable, the coin becomes. A 1968 penny graded MS 67 or above? That's rare territory. Very few examples exist in that pristine condition. Now, let's not forget demand. Collectors are always chasing what's rare, what's unusual, what's in perfect condition. A simple 1968 S penny that's flawless, has a high grade, or contains a known minting error can spark serious bidding wars at auctions. And sometimes, the price gets pushed to unbelievable heights. Imagine, the same penny you used to buy a piece of candy, or the one you handed over without a thought, could actually be one of the rarest coins in your entire collection. And yes, this has really happened, because one of these unassuming 1968 Lincoln cents, with an S mint mark, a flawless mint state condition, and the perfect mix of rarity and demand, stunned the numismatic world when it went to auction. The bidding was intense. Experts knew it was rare. Collectors were watching closely. And when the final bid came in, the number was one that almost no one could believe. That single 1968 penny, just 1 cent in face value, sold for a jaw-dropping $48,000. Yes, 1 cent $48,000. So the next time you're sorting through spare change or looking at a coin that seems old and worn, take a moment. Check the date. Look for the mint mark. Examine the details. That little copper coin could be a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. You flip it over, glance at the date, 1976, and think nothing of it. You might toss it on the counter, drop it into a tip jar, or let it disappear into the bottom of a coin jar where it's forgotten for years. But what if I told you that one of those tiny, copper-colored coins could be the key to a fortune? And it all starts with a coin that most people never think twice about, the 1976 Lincoln cent. Now, let's take a step back in time. 1976 was a big year for the United States. It was the nation's bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of American independence. Streets were lined with flags, fireworks lit up the skies, and commemorative coins were being struck in honor of the occasion. But while quarters, half dollars, and dollars got special bicentennial designs, the humble penny kept its familiar face, the Lincoln cent, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, continued without a bicentennial makeover. But that doesn't mean the 1976 penny is forgettable. In fact, it's one of the most intriguing coins of the era. Here's where the story gets interesting. In 1976, pennies were minted at two main locations, Philadelphia and Denver. If your coin has no mint mark, it came from Philadelphia. But if you see a tiny D just below the date, that's a Denver mint penny, and that little d, that tiny letter most people ignore, is more important than you think. You see, not all 1976 D pennies are created equal. Among the hundreds of millions minted that year, a few were struck under unusual conditions, and even fewer survived in exceptional shape. Let's talk about what makes some of these coins so special. First, there's the possibility of errors, and collectors love errors. These include double die obverse, where parts of the design are doubled, especially the inscriptions like, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty." Some coins were misaligned during the striking process, creating dramatic and collectible off-center strikes. Others were struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the penny may have been accidentally made using the blank intended for another coin, like a dime. But even without errors, another major factor can send a penny's value skyrocketing. Condition. Coins are graded based on their physical state, from heavily circulated to absolutely pristine. And those that have been perfectly preserved, with no scratches, discoloration, or wear, earn the prestigious title of mint state, or MS. The highest grades, like MS 66, MS 67, or even higher, are so rare that only a handful of examples exist in the entire world. Finding a 1976 D Lincoln penny in one of these top grades is like finding a four-leaf clover in a desert, but it does happen, and collectors are constantly on the hunt for that perfect combination: the mint mark, the year, the condition, and the uniqueness that makes one penny stand out from the rest. Sometimes it's a coin that's been stored in a drawer for decades, untouched since the day it was minted. Other times, it's one that turns up unexpectedly in a bag of old change inherited from a grandparent. But no matter where it comes from, the discovery is always exciting, and often very profitable. Now, let's talk numbers. Out of all the 1976 Lincoln cents ever minted, only a tiny fraction are known to have been graded at the highest levels. Some of them have eye-popping luster, sharp strike details, and perfect surfaces, the kind that make coin experts and collectors do a double take. And when one of those coins makes its way to an auction, the results can be absolutely stunning, because one 1976 Lincoln penny, with a Denver mint mark, in exceptional condition and perfect mint state grading, a coin that once cost a single cent, shocked collectors and stunned the auction floor when it sold for a mind-blowing $43,000. Yes, you heard that right. 1 cent, $43,000. So the next time you're sorting through spare change or you happen to spot a 1976 penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Flip it over. Check the mint mark. Study the details. That tiny coin might just be a piece of American history, and your unexpected ticket to an unbelievable payday. Today, we're going to dive into the fascinating world of one of the most intriguing coins from the 1970s, the 1972 Lincoln penny. This seemingly humble coin holds a fascinating history and, believe it or not, can be worth much more than its face value. In fact, if you're lucky enough to find a rare version, it could be worth an eye-popping amount. Stick around to the end, because you won't believe just how much a 1972 Lincoln penny can be worth. Let's take a step back and look at the 1972 penny's place in history. The year 1972 marked a pivotal time in the United States. The country was in the midst of the Vietnam War, and President Richard Nixon was dealing with his own political drama. But beyond the headlines, the U.S. Mint was busy producing millions of coins to support the economy. The 1972 Lincoln penny was among these coins, which were struck at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. Most people are familiar with this coin, as it features Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that's been iconic for years. But there's more to the story than meets the eye. Why is the 1972 Lincoln penny so special? It all comes down to a unique error that occurred during its production. In 1972, the U.S. Mint made a significant mistake when creating the dies for the pennies. This led to what is now known as the 1972 double die penny. If you've never heard of this, you're probably wondering what a double die is. Well, it's a minting error where the design appears to be doubled, giving the letters and numbers an extra layer of detail. The most noticeable feature of this error is found in the date, with the 1972 appearing as though it has been struck twice. The most noticeable doubling is in the 7 and the 2, where you can clearly see a second shadow of the number. If you look closely at the lettering around the rim, like Liberty or In God We Trust, you'll also notice that they're doubled. This error is significant because it was a one-time flaw that made certain 1972 Lincoln pennies extremely rare. As a result, collectors began to take notice, and over the years, these pennies have become highly sought after. Not only are error coins rare, but the condition of the coin plays a massive role in determining its value. Coins that have been well preserved without damage or wear are even more valuable to collectors. Now, you might be wondering how much a 1972 double die penny could be worth. Most of the 1972 pennies are still in circulation today, and they're only worth 1 cent. However, the double die versions can fetch a pretty penny themselves, depending on their condition and specific features. In general, a 1972 Lincoln penny with a double die error can be worth several $100s in good condition. But some of these error pennies, particularly those with high-grade mint conditions, graded MS 65 and higher, can fetch thousands at auction. The prices soar even higher for those rare varieties with clean, sharp strikes, and especially those with no visible wear and tear. Coins in mint condition, where the details are fully visible and unmarred by the passage of time, are the holy grail for collectors. What's even more surprising is that some extremely rare versions of the 1972 double die penny have sold for much, much more. Imagine finding a coin that you could purchase for just a few cents decades ago, and now it's worth an amount that seems almost too good to be true, and now, the moment you've been waiting for. If you happen to find a pristine 1972 double die Lincoln penny, especially one that's been carefully stored and is free of wear, it could be worth an astounding $40,000. Yes, you heard that right. $40,000 for a single penny. It's hard to believe, but the rarity, condition, and the fascinating story behind this coin make it one of the most valuable pieces of American numismatic history. So, the next time you come across a 1972 Lincoln penny, take a moment to inspect it closely. Look at the date, the letters, and the overall condition. Could it be the rare double die penny you've been looking for? You never know. Whether it's from your coin jar, an old change purse, or even your grandmother's collection, this small, seemingly insignificant penny might just be the golden ticket you never expected.